A few years ago, buying a house in Chandler sometimes felt like a full contact sport. You'd see the house, you loved the house, and before you could even talk about it over dinner, somebody else had already offered 50 grand over asking. They're waiving the inspections and they're throwing in the firstborn kid or whatever they're doing. That is not the market that we are in anymore. So, does this mean that Chandler has officially become a buyer's market? Let's talk about it.
You're listening to the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. Ryan Hamilton is a real estate agent with Good Oak Real Estate and the heart behind the I Do Guru, helping people build strong foundations, both in their homes and in their marriages. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. I, of course, Ryan Hamilton. We've been on a couple of weeks summer vacation break, but we are back, baby. Again, Ryan Hamilton with Good Oak Real Estate. Real estate agent with Good Oak Real Estate and wedding officiant with the I Do Guru. And it's been a couple of weeks since our last episode. So we're going to jump back in with a quick real estate update. And today we're getting very local. Now, before we get into it, I do want to make one thing clear. I help buyers, sellers, investors throughout the entire Phoenix Valley and surrounding areas and throughout the Greater Tucson area and surrounding areas. So I'm not suddenly just becoming this I only serve Chandler. But I live in Chandler. This is my community. This is where I raise my family. And I know I have a lot of Chandler people who listen to the podcast, follow me on social media, or just occasionally wonder, what the hell is actually happening with the real estate market right now? So, Chandler peeps, this one's for you. And the question that I want to talk about today is Chandler becoming a buyer's market? The short answer, it's definitely becoming more buyer friendly. But like most things in real estate, the real answer is a little bit more complicated than a simple yes or no. So here are 3 quick things that you need to know about the Chandler real estate market right now. But first, you know the rules. We can't talk about real estate until we get the dad joke out of the way. So, I was at my friend's house the other day and he asked me if I'd seen the dog bowl. And I'm like, hey, I didn't even know your dog could bowl. So I may have messed up that delivery or whatever, but we're going to roll with it. One take, let's go. So back to Chandler real estate market. A couple of important things to consider when we're talking about this. Number 1, homes are taking longer to sell. So if you remember a few years ago, when a house would hit the market on Thursday, there would be 27 showings on Friday, 12 offers by Saturday, and by Sunday, someone had their firstborn child and had waived the application or the inspection period. Yes, those days are gone. And honestly, it's probably a good thing. Right now, depending on which metric you're looking at, homes in Chandler are generally taking longer to sell than they did during the craziness of a few years ago. Some homes are still going under contract within a few weeks, while the broader time a property spends on the market can stretch considerably longer. And of course, it varies slightly based on the home's price, its condition, the location, all those sorts of things. But the important takeaway is this. Buyers do have more time than they did a few years ago. They can actually schedule a showing. They can think about the house. They can talk it over. They can maybe even sleep on it for a couple of nights. What a concept. But here's the other side of that. The best homes are still selling. If a home is priced correctly, if it shows well, and if it's in a desirable location, buyers are absolutely still paying attention and they are being aggressive if it is that great, perfect, whatever home for them. So this isn't a dead market. It's just a market where sellers have to work a little bit harder to earn those buyers' attention, to earn those eyeballs, and to earn those trips through the house. So second thing to consider, buyers have more options and more leverage. That is probably one of the biggest changes that we've seen. Buyers have choices again. And when the buyers have choices, they don't feel like they have to grab the first house they see because because they were terrified that someone else was going to swoop it up. They can compare homes. They can compare neighborhoods. They can look at condition. They can look at pricing. And depending on the property, they may have more room to negotiate on things like price, closing costs, repairs, interest rate buy downs, which are still a thing right now and very popular. Or some of those other terms that were almost impossible to ask for during the craziness of a few years ago. That doesn't mean every seller is desperate. And it definitely doesn't mean that buyers can just throw out ridiculous lowball offers and expect sellers to just say yes. But there is more room for actual negotiation. And frankly, that's what a healthier real estate market is supposed to look like. The third thing to consider is pricing matters now more than it ever did. This is probably the biggest conversation that I'm having with my sellers right now. A few years ago, the market could sometimes bail you out if you overpriced your home. Today, not so much. Buyers are paying attention. They know when a house is overpriced. They can see how long it's been on the market. They can see the price reductions. And when a home sits too long, buyers will start to wonder, what's wrong with it? Even when the answer is nothing. It was just priced a little bit too high in the beginning. That's why getting the pricing strategy right from the beginning is so important, because we've seen the pattern. A home comes on too high. It sits. Then there's a price reduction. Then another one. And sometimes the seller ends up accepting less than they might have gotten if they had simply priced the home accordingly and correctly from day one. So if you're selling right now, the strategy can't be, let's just throw a number out there and see what happens. You need to understand the competition. You need to understand what buyers are actually responding to. You need to understand that the timeline, the market, how many days on market in your area, and you need a real marketing and pricing strategy. So, is Chandler a buyer's market? I would say that Chandler is certainly more buyer-friendly than it has been in years. And depending on the neighborhood, price point, and property, buyers may have some real leverage here. But I think the bigger story is that we're seeing something that looks a lot more like a normal, balanced real estate market, or leading that direction. Buyers have choices. Sellers can still get their results. But both sides need a strategy. And honestly, I think that's healthy. So to all my Chandler people, this is your quick local update. And if you're listening from anywhere else, don't worry. I haven't forgotten about you. Again, I work the entire Phoenix Valley and surrounding areas, Pinal County, Maricopa County. I also help buyers and sellers throughout the Greater Tucson area. So whether you're in Chandler, Gilbert, Tempe, Scottsdale, Tucson, Corona de Tucson, somewhere in between, if you're thinking about making a move and you want to talk it through what the market actually looks like for your specific situation, feel free to reach out, because real estate is hyper-local. And what's happening in Chandler, or even in one Chandler neighborhood, isn't necessarily what's happening everywhere else. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Houses and Spouses podcast. And as always, if you enjoyed this quick market update, make sure you subscribe, share the episode with somebody who you think might find helpful, and feel free to leave me a review. I've always wanted to say, smash the like button. So go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button. And hope to see you on the next episode. And hopefully it'll be less than a couple of weeks next time. Thanks.
This has been the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone who needs it. For real estate help or a wedding ceremony crafted with care, connect with Ryan online. See you next week.